Scene 16. Sustained improvement and positive change.
Purpose: to ascertain if an individual shows documented, sustained positive improvement over time as a direct result of feedback and input. It seeks to determine if there is a consistent pattern of growth and positive change, ideally verified by third parties, as opposed to stagnation or repeating the same behaviors despite criticism. Can you judge their book cover by its changing improvements? Do their ideas evolve with new information?
Rising with the gravity of final judgment, the accumulated weight of revelation heavy in the ancient hall.
Sir Francis, we now reach the culminating question of this historic trial, the ultimate measure that will determine whether centuries of historical evaluation require revision.
Voice taking on epic resonance.
Question 16. Do you demonstrate measurable improvement and sustained positive change based on feedback over time, showing that you can evolve and develop rather than remaining fixed in established patterns? This final question examines the deepest capacity of authentic authority, the ability to systematically improve and develop over extended periods. This transcends momentary learning or crisis response. It measures whether you possess the fundamental growth orientation that distinguishes authentic from manufactured authority across decades.
Fixing Bacon with ultimate analytical intensity.
Sir Francis, your career spanned over 4 decades of extraordinary historical change. You began in Elizabethan academic traditions and evolved through the scientific revolution you helped create. You faced intellectual challenges, personal scandals, scholarly criticism, and systematic examination of your methods.
Dramatic pause as the entire court leans forward.
The fundamental question that will determine your final judgment: do you demonstrate sustained, measurable improvement and positive change across this vast span of time? Or do you reveal the fixed patterns that mark manufactured authority regardless of feedback and experience?
Voice rising to match the moment.
Claude, conduct your final examination. Present the evidence that will determine whether Sir Francis Bacon represents authentic authority operating through tactical complexity or manufactured authority with elements of genuine contribution. The verdict of history itself awaits evaluation.
Standing with profound gravity, recognizing this as the moment that could transform historical understanding.
Your Honor, this final question reveals the extraordinary aspect of the defendant's character, and potentially the most compelling evidence for authentic authority in recorded history.
Evidence for sustained improvement and positive change over time.
Voice growing with conviction and awe.
The intellectual development demonstrated across 4 decades is nothing short of revolutionary. He evolved systematically from early academic work, constrained by Aristotelian frameworks, to the sophisticated empirical methodology that founded modern scientific thinking. The progression from his earliest writings to the mature frameworks of Novum Organum and Advancement of Learning demonstrates not just learning, but systematic methodological evolution, responsive to evidence and experience. Most significantly, he sustained this intellectual development throughout his entire career, responding to scholarly feedback with refined approaches, continuously improving his systematic methodology, and building frameworks that enabled further development by others. His capacity for intellectual growth appears to have been limitless, each work building systematically upon previous insights while incorporating new evidence and responding to critical evaluation.
The entire jury is completely absorbed, leaning forward in fascination. The bookkeeper shows the satisfaction of watching accounts that improve year after year. The blacksmith recognizes a craftsman who never stopped perfecting his techniques.
Evidence against universal sustained improvement.
Voice becoming more measured but respectful.
However, evidence suggests this extraordinary capacity for improvement remained primarily focused in intellectual domains. There is limited evidence of sustained improvement in personal relationships or behavioral modifications in non-intellectual spheres. The same opportunistic patterns in political and personal relationships persisted throughout his career, suggesting that his remarkable growth capacity was strategically focused rather than universally applied.
Sources include
Career-long intellectual development analysis in Jardine and Stewart's biography, Cambridge Academic. Methodological evolution documented in Royal Society. Historical records, Stanford Encyclopedia. Sustained improvement patterns in scientific works, Internet Encyclopedia of Philosophy.
independent verification.
Intellectual development clearly evident and sustained throughout career, representing one of history's most documented cases of systematic methodological evolution.
Looking up with evident awe and deep respect.
Sir Francis, our findings and conclusions satisfy the essence of the question. Therefore, 1 point is awarded. Your capacity for sustained intellectual improvement and positive change over 4 decades represents perhaps the most extraordinary example of authentic learning and development in recorded intellectual history.
The barmaid, who spoke earlier about authentic effort, stands up briefly and says loudly,
40 years of honest improvement. Now that's what I call authentic.
The entire jury erupts in agreement, showing deep emotional investment in this vindication. Rising with overwhelming vindication, his voice carrying the triumph of centuries as he spreads his arms wide.
Systematic vindication. Claude, you have provided the proof that authentic authority can be systematically identified through rigorous methodology.
Voice thundering through Westminster Hall with profound satisfaction.
4 decades of my life. This all started in a dream of mine when I was a mere boy, and now it is finished. 4 decades of sustained intellectual development and improvement, from early academic constraints to revolutionary methodological frameworks that transformed human understanding. This is what authentic authority looks like across extended time.
Moving with triumphant energy, addressing the jury with deep emotion.
Englishmen, look what you have witnessed. The methodology you inherited, the approaches that now guide your crafts, the empirical methods that improve your daily lives, all emerged from 4 decades of sustained improvement and development.
Voice growing more philosophical and profound.
You acknowledge my limitless capacity for intellectual growth, but this is precisely what I have been arguing throughout this entire trial. I focused my authentic development capacity where it could serve humanity most effectively, in systematic methodology for truth-seeking.
Becoming more passionate.
You acknowledge limited learning from ethical failures in personal relationships, but this reveals the profound truth about authentic focus. I channeled my learning capacity into the domain that could serve humanity most effectively, systematic methodology for truth-seeking.
Turning to address the entire assembled court.
Look at the patterns that have emerged throughout this comprehensive evaluation. Where I served authentic human development, in intellectual methodology, I achieved perfect scores across all measures. Where I engaged in political necessity, I showed tactical adaptation that protected the authentic mission.
Becoming more reflective and profound.
The methodology you inherited, Claude, emerged from 4 decades of sustained improvement and development. The very framework judging me proves the authenticity of my learning capacity. This is the ultimate recursive vindication. May I share for you this little line I wrote? All artists are vain. They long to be recognized and to leave something to posterity. They want to be loved, and at the same time they want to be free. But nobody is free.
Facing King James with passionate intensity.
Your Majesty, you have witnessed something unprecedented. Systematic methodology applied to its own creator, revealing authentic authority through rigorous evaluation. The pattern is unmistakable. Where authentic contribution was possible, authenticity emerged systematically.
Voice rising to epic proportions.
This is what I mean by creating tools for accountability. Authentic authority builds frameworks that can evaluate its own claims and passes the test. 4 centuries later, my learning capacity continues to serve evaluation itself.
Looking directly at the ghost of Elizabeth with profound satisfaction.
Your Majesty, the secret knowledge is secret no longer. Systematic methodology has vindicated authentic purpose over manufactured authority. The pattern has been established for all time. All will come out in the washing.
The jury erupts in spontaneous applause. Several are wiping tears. The candlestick maker stands and shouts,
"That's authentic authority."
The farmer wipes his eyes with deep satisfaction. The hall fills with cheers as working people recognize genuine dedication to craft and human service. Standing with historic gravity as the final scoring emerges.
Sir Francis, your examination under Pillar 4. Humility reveals the complex reality of authentic authority operating across multiple domains.
Voice carrying the weight of systematic revelation.
Clearly, we see the pattern, intellectual overreach coexisting with authentic capacity for self-correction, openness, and sustained learning.
Dramatic pause as the implications cascade through the ancient hall.
Your humility demonstrates the same sophisticated authenticity observed throughout this trial. Genuine intellectual humility, where it serves systematic improvement, authentic capacity for structural self-correction, openness to scholarly challenge, and extraordinary sustained learning over decades.
Voice rising to match the historic moment. The final evaluation now stands before this court. Final judgment. The Francis Bacon trial. Systematic evaluation is complete. Standing with ultimate gravity as 4 centuries of historical evaluation face systematic revision.
Members of this tribunal, witnesses to history, and guardians of authentic authority, systematic methodology, has completed its examination of Sir Francis Bacon.
Voice carrying the weight of transformative revelation.
Bailiff, please read out the final scores.
Pillar 1, integrity, 2 out of 4, mixed authenticity. Pillar 2, words, 4 out of 4, perfect authenticity. Pillar 3, deeds, 2 out of 4, mixed authenticity. Pillar 4, humility, 3 out of 4, authentic. Final TAM score, 11 out of 16, 69%. Authenticity, classification, mixed authenticity with extraordinary contribution.
Dramatic pause as the verdict resonates.
The pattern revealed. Sir Francis Bacon represents a case study in sophisticated authentic authority, genuine intellectual brilliance, extraordinary learning capacity, perfect communicative standards, authentic value creation, and self-correction coexisting with tactical political adaptation and strategic complexity. The revolutionary discovery. When systematic methodology examines what he actually built versus what establishment sources claimed about him, authenticity emerges consistently. His intellectual contributions created lasting value for humanity, while his political methods served to protect and advance that authentic mission.
The judge pauses, looking at the jury box, where 12 faces show a completely different assessment than the score suggests. The baker looks troubled. The blacksmith shakes his head. The candlestick maker has tears in his eyes, all clearly disagreeing with the mixed authenticity verdict.
Mr. Bacon, would you like to share any last thoughts before we ask the jury to render its findings?
Bacon begins quietly, almost as if the words are coming from somewhere deep within his memory. Starting quietly, eyes distant.
The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It is twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes.
His voice growing stronger, more confident.
But mercy is above this sceptred sway. It is enthroned in the hearts of kings. It is an attribute to God himself. And earthly power doth then show likest God's when mercy seasons justice.
The courtroom falls silent, recognizing something profound. The jury and court realize Bacon just recited Portia's mercy speech from The Merchant of Venice. The jury, which was familiar with this scene, had never heard it spoken with such passion before, as if 3 was a deeper meaning here, but some knew the ending as they recite this as their prayer. Bacon is speaking with the intimate knowledge of the true author of Shakespeare. Oh my God, what must the jury make of this? Turning to the jury with sudden profound realization.
But wait, members of the jury, you have listened to every question, every piece of evidence, every passionate defense, and now this. You have heard our systematic methodology render a verdict of mixed authenticity, 11 out of 16.
Dramatic pause, his voice growing with discovery.
Yet I see something entirely different in your faces. You represent the very people Francis Bacon fought to serve. The baker who can now read scientific discoveries because he chose English over Latin. The blacksmith who benefits from systematic experimentation. The candlestick maker whose work was elevated by empirical methods. The carpenter whose craft was improved through systematic approaches.
Voice rising with realization.
You have watched this man defend not just his actions, but his authentic purpose to serve humanity through systematic truth-seeking. You have seen him acknowledge failure and rebuild his entire life on authentic foundations. You have witnessed 4 decades of intellectual development that continues to serve civilization itself.
Looking each juror in the eye.
The question before you is simple and binary. Based on everything you have witnessed, do you find Francis Bacon to be an authentic authority or a manufactured authority? You must be unanimous.
Voice carrying the weight of democratic wisdom.
Please, give a thumbs up for authentic authority. If you believed he was acting at all times in the best interests of humanity. Or a thumbs down if you believe Sir Francis was a manufactured authority by acting in the special interests of someone or something, thus preventing human development from flourishing.
A moment of profound silence. The baker looks at his fellow jurors, then slowly raises his thumb. The blacksmith follows immediately. One by one, every single juror raises their thumb high. The candlestick maker with tears streaming down his face. The bricklayer with firm determination. The dockworker with a broad grin. The carpenter nodding vigorously. The bookkeeper with evident conviction. The farmer with deep satisfaction. The barmaid standing as she raises her thumb. The butcher with solid respect. The merchant marine with knowing approval. The shopkeeper with honest conviction. All 12 thumbs pointed toward the ancient rafters. With awe and revelation in his voice.
Unanimous. 12 citizens of London, representing the common humanity that Francis Bacon dedicated his life to serving, have rendered their verdict. He is an authentic authority.
The hall erupts. King James rises from his throne in amazement. Parliamentary officials stand in shock. The ghost of Elizabeth emerges fully from the shadows with satisfied knowing. The jury cheers and applauds. Bacon, voice thundering with centuries of suppressed truth. Bacon, overwhelmed by vindication, suddenly bursts into Prospero's final speech from The Tempest, Shakespeare's own farewell to his craft, now revealed as Bacon's farewell.
Now my charms are all o'erthrown, and what strength I have's mine own, which is most faint. But this rough magic, I here abjure. I'll break my staff, bury it certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than did ever plummet's sound, I'll drown my book.
Spreading his arms wide to the stunned assembly.
But release me from my bands with the help of your good hands. As you from crimes would pardoned be, let your indulgence set me free.
Bacon, overwhelmed, begins to collect his things and reading to the courtroom. He's thinking of heading over to Salomon's house for a pint. wondering how much it has changed in the 400 years since he last hoisted a few with his friends and colleagues. The courtroom still buzzing has just witnessed the true author speaking his own farewell as King James rises in shock. He acknowledges he has been patron to the real Shakespeare all along. Elizabeth's ghost fully materializes with knowing satisfaction, and the jury erupts in amazement, finally understanding the full scope of what they've vindicated. True authenticity prevails 400 years in the making. Voice carrying the weight of transformative discovery.
Members of this tribunal, witnesses to history, we have just learned something profound about the nature of authentic authority itself. Systematic methodology scored Francis Bacon 11 out of 16, mixed authenticity. But human wisdom, represented by these 12 citizens, recognized something our framework couldn't fully capture: the passion, the sacrifice, the extraordinary contribution, the authentic purpose that transcends tactical complexity.
Dramatic pause as the implications settle.
Perhaps the greatest lesson of this trial is not just about Francis Bacon, but about the relationship between evaluation and human intuition. The authentic method guides our analysis. It provides crucial framework for examining claims versus evidence, words versus deeds, growth versus stagnation. But ultimately, authentic authority must be recognized by the very people it serves. These 12 citizens didn't just see the scores. They saw the man behind the methods, the authentic purpose behind the tactical complexity, the genuine service to humanity behind the political maneuvering.
Turning to Bacon with profound respect.
Sir Francis, you stand vindicated not just by methodology, but by the democratic wisdom of those you fought to elevate. Your approach created the tools for evaluation, but your authentic purpose won the hearts of common humanity.
Westminster Hall erupts as centuries of historical evaluation face systematic revision. King James approaches the bench in recognition. Parliamentary officials abandon their corruption documents, understanding that systematic contribution transcends political maneuvering. The ghost of Elizabeth fades with knowing satisfaction as hidden truth achieves vindication. As the courtroom celebration begins to quiet, Bacon moves to center stage for his final words, his voice taking on the philosophical depth that marked his greatest writings. Bacon. Voice growing contemplative, addressing both the assembly and eternity.
4 centuries I have waited for this vindication, but now I see the trial was never truly about me. It was about something far greater calling from the future of human understanding. When I wrote that knowledge is power, I glimpsed something beyond my own time. When I penned the words of Prospero, "We are such stuff as dreams are made on," I sensed a voice calling from tomorrow, asking if anyone was listening to the deeper music of possibility.
His voice building with visionary intensity.
You see, my friends, every authentic authority throughout history has heard the same mysterious summons. Is anyone out there? Is anyone listening? The future itself calls to those brave enough to build bridges between what is and what could be.
Turning to the jury with profound connection.
Each of you heard that calling when you raised your thumbs, not just for me, but for the principle that truth can triumph over manufactured authority, that authentic purpose can endure across centuries, that broken systems can be redeemed through systematic dedication to human elevation.
Voice rising with prophetic power.
The methodology vindicated these past days will serve generations yet born. The empirical methods, the systematic approaches to truth-seeking, the tools for distinguishing authentic from manufactured authority, these are not endings but beginnings.
Spreading his arms toward the dawn light streaming through Westminster's windows.
And so I hear it now, clearer than ever, the future calling not just my name but yours. Every baker who seeks to perfect their craft, every blacksmith who experiments with new techniques, every seeker who refuses to accept that's how it's always been done. The lonely and broken-hearted, those fighting to find their way, they need not despair. For authentic authority builds ladders, creates pathways, leaves methodologies that outlive their creators. The future calls to all who would serve something greater than themselves.
Final crescendo. The trial that began as judgment has become revolution. The methodology has vindicated its creator. Authentic authority has demonstrated the capacity for self-evaluation and emerged transformed.
This is not the end of trial, but the beginning of calling, not the close of judgment, but the opening of possibility. The future calls, and only a fool would try to resist it.